Hey, everybody. My name is Jake. This is Altworldly, a channel where I talk about whatever I want, mostly things that are giving me existential dread and anxiety, and then I try and talk until I feel a little bit better, or until it's time for bed because I have to go to work in the morning. My name is Jake. I think I said that. I'm a former Jehovah's Witness. That doesn't actually matter to today's stream, or maybe ever in the future. We'll see. No, I think that'll probably matter in the future. But we gather here today, and we'll see how many people gather, because who knows if this is a good idea. But there's a podcast that came out, and you guys know how I like to react to people having conversations on the New York Times podcast feed. For some reason, that has been the direction of my channel's output recently. And I haven't been doing a lot of lives lately because I've been trying to focus on the main channel stuff, the next Elon video, which I'm working on. But this video here, which we'll talk about here. I'll give you just a little taste. This is what it looks like. This is what the video looks like, just so you know. And what the video overall that you're looking at is going to look like is there's going to be a cat named Bo who's going to be rambunctious and causing problems in the background. He is a content enhancer, not a distraction. It's good, everything that he's doing and the noises that he makes that pick up on mic and make things hard to deal with. Right. So the reason why we're gathered here today. I just had a lot of feelings and thoughts about it, and I thought to start to try and articulate why I want to talk about this interview. I would read a passage of a book by a man named Ta-Nehisi Coates, who is the author of a great book called The Message, which came out either late last year or early this year. And thank you, Christina has rescued me from Bo for just a little while. That's right. There are many harmless animals. Oh, it feels disrespectful to play that sound drop for such a somber occasion. Okay, so Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote this thing in The Message, and The Message is a book about a lot of things. But it's a book about language and how to push back against narratives and how the way that we use language and tell stories, how humans use language, can shape perception and can be used to push back against the popular narratives of things. It talks, he visits Palestine, but he also visits other places. He visits a place in the United States where one of his books is being banned in a school. So he's the best. He's one of the best writers alive. And he wrote this thing that just crystallized a lot of stuff that I've had in my brain as somebody who cares about the world and wishes that it was better and not quite so scary all the time. So he's saying this when he says the lack of policy change here. He's talking about Black Lives Matter in the context, but this can be applied broadly. Some of us, oh, real mumble mouth there. Some of us see the lack of policy change and wonder if the movement itself was futile. But policy change is an endpoint, not an origin. The cradle of material change is in our imagination and ideas. And whereas white supremacy, like any other status quo, can default to the cliched claims and excuses for the world as is, some cops are just rotten apples, America is the guardian of the free world, we have the burden of crafting new language and stories that allow people to imagine that new policies are possible. First of all, he's just one, maybe the best American writer, so it's always great to read his words. But also, those words have been rumbling around in my head in recent weeks because I feel existential dread about the state of the United States. We're in a civil war. I actually was going to do a whole bit where I talk about that up top, but I forgot because there's a lot on my mind, grapes. And that was a reference to 30 Rock, a show that used to make me happy when it was the before time. Actually, it still makes me happy. We were just rewatching 30 Rock for the 30,000th time. And it's been very easy for me to retreat into rewatching my favorite shows and rereading my favorite stories and replaying my favorite video games or just another run of Hades 2, Hades 2, Hades 2, Hades 2. Um, but I think a lot of times that retreating is because I don't have the language to express what it is that I'm feeling, like on an existential level. And the feeling that so much of the conversations that we are having, we, in this instance, and this is important, meaning normal people in anti-Trump worlds. I'm not saying you gotta, whatever political ideology, you're somebody who thinks Trump is bad and that we live under tyranny, that we need to, that we got some big problems. That's the we that I'm talking about here. I think that we are often talking past each other and using a lot of language that is not useful or is kind of causing us to fail to use our imaginations to see new solutions, instead of having the same conversations over and over and over. And speaking of having the same conversations over and over and over, the Ezra Klein podcast. So I have been listening to fewer podcasts. That's good for me, fewer political podcasts anyway, because I started to notice this thing that I noticed, when I had surgery and I was in the hospital for a couple weeks and I just would have like cable news on all the time. What I realized very quickly is, oh, this is why I don't watch the news, because it's just the same conversations over and over and over. And I started to realize that same thing about podcasts too, including people that I liked or thought I liked anyway, like Ezra Klein. But Ezra Klein, as a commentator who I enjoy generally, past tense perhaps, he's really been pissing me off for a while, and I'm feeling kind of like president of the Ezra Klein fucking sucks fan club these days. And so I was really interested. So I kind of avoid watching his show, to be honest, now, because I don't like to watch things that just upset me for no reason. Or asterisk. But I love Ta-Nehisi Coates, and so I wanted to watch this because Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote, to give some context, 7 minutes in, a really great rebuttal to a stupid garbage article that Ezra Klein wrote. Ezra Klein wrote this very strange eulogy, I guess, or obituary. I don't. Do you call it a eulogy when it's in writing in the opinion section of the New York Times? He wrote a thing that was like, Charlie Kirk did politics the right way, and basically tried to make it sound like Charlie Kirk, like, hey, say what you will about the man, I certainly disagreed with most of what he said, but at least he was engaged in the work of persuasion and trying to get ideas out there and talk to people. And it's really a piece that could only have been written if you ignore everything Charlie Kirk ever said, which he did, actually. Ezra Klein did not include so much as one quote from Charlie Kirk in his piece. And that is what Ta-Nehisi Coates pointed out in his very, very damning rebuttal, which I think we might have actually read on the Charlie Kirk stream that I did, which if you want to go back and watch past streams, you can always go to the live stream playlist. A lot of the live streams I unlist, but they're still like visible. But I just don't want a bunch of like 3-hour long rambles clogging up the timeline and people's recommendations feeds. This masterpiece will obviously remain up. I've been laser focused for 9 minutes straight. So Ta-Nehisi Coates really read Ezra Klein for filth and called out the fact that Ezra Klein didn't even use any words from Charlie Kirk. Where is Coates' rebuttal? It was published in Vanity Fair. Oh, it's in the description. I actually remembered to put stuff in the description. Did I not? Let me double check. I'm pretty sure I linked. Yes. Okay. So I linked in the description, again, things I meant to mention right up top and not 10 minutes in, was you can watch their conversation. You can read Klein's original article about Charlie Kirk, and then you can read Ta-Nehisi Coates' response. And then, the promo link for StreamYard. You know, I'll just tell you right now, you don't need to click that. I mean, I guess if you're going to start a StreamYard account, do it, but I didn't realize I had it set up to do that, so I'll unclick that box later. No, I'm glad you mentioned that legitimately because now people know because it's Mike's super short show. No, wait a minute. This is Alt Worldly, or maybe we'll change the name to just my name soon. I don't know. Been thinking about that. So anyway, this is like T for Libby snob, overly literate types. And to ramble further before I start, first of all, shout out to Cornelia. Thanks for loving the channel, and I'm so glad you did make it to a live stream. We'll see if we can get the people pumped up. I couldn't think of a good way to be like, I mean, it's not like I'm going to promote this stream. How would I even do that? Like, financially? Put up a billboard? I don't know. We'll see if more people watch it at some point. But I'm having fun just chilling here this evening, working through my feelings. Now, okay, so this is the thing that I wanted to point out. Klein's a fascist. Now, Maddie may be, and I don't know, maybe abiding by a certain rule of thumb or an aphorism, a truism, that I don't know what the origin of this is. That if you cut a liberal, a fascist bleeds. And also, very germane to this conversation is the kind of white moderate described in Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail. The white moderate who, I mean, I can't remember the exact quote, but basically who is polite, a polite bigot, is willing to tolerate the company of bigots, and so is willing to concede a few human rights here and there. And so by that metric, is Ezra Klein fascist? I think no. But what I found kind of fascinating about this, and I don't know, light bulb moment, in the sense that there's been like a very slowly dimming light bulb over the last like 3 months in my head as I've listened to political podcasts in a stupor of depression, is like, oh, all of these people, even very well-intentioned people in independent liberal media, but really all of kind of like Democrat podcast land, they are all having a completely different conversation than we the people are having, if I may. My fellow randos out there. I almost said my fellow Randys. I don't know. I don't want to presume anyone's randiness out there. But what the fuck is this stream, by the way? I'm so sorry. A machine is what it does. Yeah, no, I think it's totally valid. And I actually posted to Thread something to that exact effect. I don't remember what I said, but I posted like, I think what I said was, I don't know if it's true that like if you cut every liberal a fascist bleeds, but if you cut a neoliberal a fascist bleeds is the truest shit I've ever heard. And I part of this distinction between liberal and leftist and progressive and all that stuff is part of that language hiccup or maybe not hiccup, but that thing that I'm getting like stuck on is we're having all these different conversations, like in very online left spaces, like we're in right now. I mean, obviously, and I'm not kidding, of course, I'm a centrist, raging moderate who loves capitalism more than my own future child. I haven't even had a kid yet, and I love capitalism more than that little bastard. So I'm not saying if I'm on the radical left, but no bits. In our spaces, in these lefty spaces, liberal is like a slur. It means you are not actually on the left. Like you're kind of, you've got one toe in the fascist bathwater. You've got one toe in the fascist bathwater is what you've got there. Just to quote that fucking famous expression my grandpappy used to say. But then, yeah. Neoliberals are center right. Yeah, exactly. Lean more towards fascism than they do towards socialism. Exactly. And I think whether Ezra Klein likes to admit it or not, and I'm certain that he will never admit it as long as he lives. And look at how healthy he is. He'll live a long time. I think that what he is finding is that he doesn't actually have values based in humanity. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I do want to talk about that liberal thing, right? Because I actually don't know, as anyone can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I don't know that I've ever heard Ta-Nehisi Coates call himself a liberal or a socialist or a progressive or anything. Like, I don't know that he's used any of those terms to describe himself. Klein absolutely describes himself as a liberal, like Democrat. He uses those words to describe himself. And so there are like politically informed people who kind of know what labels they're using. They know what words they're throwing around. They're having one conversation. And then there's normies. Let's say people who would not be on a Tuesday night watching this kind of stream, perhaps. They're doing, I guess, whatever it is normal people do. We'll never know because we're doing this. But they and most people, most just average people, just use liberal to mean that just kind of anyone on the left. It's liberal and conservative. That's the language that everyone uses. And very critically, that's the language that MAGA uses. It's the language that the Republican Party has used for, close to 100 years to conflate in the minds of Republicans liberal and Satan. Like, those two, a Republican, a liberal, is the scariest thing there is. And, meanwhile, those of us who maybe are further to the left than like your average American liberal, we find that pretty laughable that someone like Joe Biden is like a satanic communist or something. And so I kind of find all of these labels a little useless, and playing their game. It to me seems like we live in a world where the Constitution no longer applies because they've rendered it a dead letter. Today the president declared war on U.S. cities, on the enemy within, and the enemy within is the radical left, Antifa, woke people. It is an intentionally vague description, and they're going to be much more draconian in the way that they monitor speech, and they already have been. Pro-Palestinian activists have been sent to concentration camps. Whatever, we all know all this stuff. But we live in a world where, like, our typical language for describing what's happening is no longer really useful. I was really, really into, and still really like to catch up with the legal podcasts and shows like that, like Strict Scrutiny and the lawfare stuff. Like whenever there was an impeachment trial happening for Trump, and there were a few, or like all of the 34 felony indictments and stuff during the Biden years. But what you started to slowly hear, and I remember during the first Trump administration too, is just all of their language and precedent and everything falling away as they realized that the law is, it is not sacred. It is not this firmly rooted thing. It is a social construct that can be chucked away. And we're now in a world where today there was a really incredible, damning ruling by a judge against the Trump administration's attempt to deport people to concentration camps for free speech. But that judge, and the judge mentions this in his or her ruling. And I apologize, I just was reading that earlier. I don't remember all the details. But they mention that they have no way of enforcing it, and that their ruling doesn't matter anymore because the Trump administration can just do whatever they want. And so all of that was a very long way of saying that I'm really fucking sick of listening to your Ezra Kleins and their ilk of like smart, thinky liberals who are always talking about messaging and how if you listen to them and we can figure out Democrats can figure out how to say how to say what that they don't actually believe in anything. All right, so I've run out of words, and now we need to actually watch the interview. This will have timestamps in the future for brave and cool viewers who know that this is a good stream that is worth watching. Wait. And also the host does know what he's doing. All right, I'm skipping past his intro a little bit.
I had written, he compared what I was doing there to the whitewashing of the Southern cause after the Civil War. I think it'd be the height of hypocrisy for me to say we need to reach across divides and disagreement and then not talk across my own. So I want to talk to Ta-Nehisi about the piece, about the aftermath of Kirk's murder, but also about a disagreement, or question at least, that I think is about more than Kirk.
Sorry, another reason I haven't been streaming is that like me and Christina have been sick. We got walking pneumonia and just were like sick on and off. So I've got like itchy nose. My allergies are a little bit bad. So if I run to grab some tissues or something, or my voice starts cracking like I'm hitting puberty, that's why. But for whatever it's worth, I do just want to say that I went into this feeling kind of optimistic because I know that Ta-Nehisi Coates and Ezra Klein are friends, and like I found their conversation about the message, Coates' book, really frustrating. Like I found Ezra Klein frustrating because he's doing his liberal Zionist justifications. But I always, like, as somebody who used to read Ezra Klein and listen to his show more, I always felt, and still maybe feel like his heart is in the right place. I don't know. I think that if this conversation, or perhaps the reaction to this conversation, doesn't give Ezra Klein pause, nothing will. But I kind of have the sense that if he really was a serious person, he would have had this conversation off mic with Ta-Nehisi Coates, because he would have realized immediately that he was a dipshit.
I think there's something very unsettled in the sort of broad coalition of the left around the work of politics, around who we talk to and when and how. When is that work moral?
That's weird. Could you hear me, even though I wasn't on the screen?
When is it a betrayal? As always, my email, EzraKleinShow@nytimes.com. Ta-Nehisi Coates, welcome back to the show.
Thanks. I don't know what number time this is.
I think you're one of the. If you go back to the box space, I think you're one of the. You're on the leaderboard for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to see you, man.
Good to be here, Ezra. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's jump into the disagreement. You wrote a column responding to my column on Charlie Kirk.
So uncomfortable.
It's okay. What was your disagreement with what I wrote after Kirk was assassinated?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to thank you for having me. I know that I've had to read things about myself that criticize my work. It's never easy, and people often have a very, very different response than the one you had, which is to invite me here and to talk it out. So I appreciate that. I want to say that up front.
Had an anti-Semitic troll in the comments.
Felt that when I initially read the column, and I guess we should be fully transparent here.
So, hey, by the way, kudos, I guess, to some degree for Ezra Klein having this discussion. But I think what I was trying to say earlier is I kind of feel like Ezra Klein thought he cooked here, and that's part of why I've been losing my mind, and like I haven't been able to get this conversation out of my head.
And so there was a discussion between us privately before there was a public thing.
Yeah, we text.
Yeah, we did. We do text regularly, and we did text about this.
I want to see that. I want the tea on that.
I felt like, having not done the research that I eventually did for the college, there was something off about what I knew about this guy, and the presentation of him as and I don't want to misquote you here, but as basically a paragon of politics and how politics should be done. So I think I had the same reaction that most ordinary people would have, which is absolute horror at the idea that this guy was somewhere speaking and was killed. But I always think it's like important to differentiate how people die versus how they live. And then after doing the research, I had to be honest with you. That's when it got really, really difficult. When I went past my initial impressions and started like going through all of the clips of the things he said, the way he talked about people, the way he, described groups in ways that honestly, even as I was writing it, I was uncomfortable saying. And so the idea that this guy.
Can we just like right off the bat, Ta-Nehisi Coates is like a real person. Like, he's a real dude. Like, talks like a real person because he is. Like, he has a line in the message that's really, I mean, it's a beautifully written book, but he describes somebody having an accent that doesn't just signal that they're from that place, but they are of that place. And he describes his accent like that, his New York accent. And Ta-Nehisi Coates is clearly just driven by a place of like humanity and compassion. And Ezra Klein, what is he driven by? Let's ask ourselves this question. This is what I've been trying to figure out. Who is his audience? Like, who is he writing for? I think I know what the answer is, but I don't know.
Should be in any way celebrated for how he conducted politics.
Now all our friends are here in chat.
He just slurred
yes.
across the board, you know, all sorts of groups of people, and then ran an organization wherein, you know, which appeared to me just a haven of hatred. You know, I would not want that to be a model for my politics. And I know, you know, as we talked between us that, you know, you are not attempting to make a statement for the entirety of it. But I guess I feel like at a certain point, somebody's legacy, or somebody does something that is so large that it's tough to think about their legacy and take that out of it. And that's how I felt about it.
So I think I want to get at the right level of disagreement here. So I think one thing for me is that, I don't know.
I think I want to try and start working on an Ezra Klein impression. And my voice might be a little too deep because of my cold that I have. But actually, I think that because I have a cold, it might get to the constant illness that it seems like he is trying to suppress. and then get in a little vocal fry. Oh, Captain Pooty. The liberal store called and they're running out of you.
For me, the immediate
Let's get to the level of disagreement
after somebody is murdered in public, when you see that sort of grief and horror pouring out of the people who loved him, and many people loved him, my instinct then is to just sit with them in their grief, right? To say, I can, for this moment, find some way to grieve with you, to see your friend the way, or in some version of the way you saw him, right? That's not my view of, you know, the person's whole legacy, but going to people when they're grieving like that and saying, listen, I want to tell you really what I thought of your friend. Just feels like not what you do in a kind of a community.
Careful about encouraging this Ezra Klein impression.
I actually think that actually is a great impulse, that after somebody's been killed, and not just killed, but because we live in the media environment that we live in, that it's seen and that it will live forever, and that person's family, you know what I mean?
That it was being looped in front of all of us.
Jesus Christ.
Which I think has a lot to do with how this was taken.
No, it's terrible. It's terrible. And to have to go, like, to have young kids who have to grow up knowing that that is a thing that exists in the world. You know what I mean?
And I'll go one step further on this. One thing I wrote about in that piece that I do worry about is I worry we're already in a cycle of political violence, of mimetic violence. I think about Pelosi. I think about Shapiro. I think about the near assassination on Trump. I think about when after that happened, I thought about me.
I wish I could talk that fast. Oh, I literally forgot that I sped it up. I was like, man, they're really rattling off some stats here. I have this on 1.25 speed. So my brain is on 0.75 speed.
Hold that you like that there's something about it that it begins to breach all lines.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess
that's part of my reaction too.
You know, I think all of that is understandable.
Josh Shapiro.
Was silence not an option?
Yeah.
Boom. Okay, so that's your first zinger. That's your first zinger, and it's an important one because here's the truth. Klein actually had not considered that he could have just shut up. He can't do that. He's got to have the take, baby. He's got to have the take on everything. And it's got to be the most sensible and wise and just nice. And no one's getting hurt over this kind of stuff, man. I don't know. It's just fucking weak. It's weak. But it's not just weak. I don't mean that, like, his piece was idealistic. It was a lie. It was, what do you call it? What do you call it when you lie about somebody in print? Maybe there's a word for that, but I think he was doing it. the way that he talked about Charlie Kirk and what he did not choose to include about him by refusing to use his words at all in the piece, it completely warps Charlie Kirk's legacy. And I think Ezra Klein just doesn't think that matters, because I think he just thinks that the more important thing is to do this charade, this dance that we're all supposed to do, where we pretend that as soon as not everybody, but as soon as an important white person gets shot, by the way, when one important white person gets shot, we have all these things that we're supposed to say. We say all our magic words to make all the problems go away. And then, but if it's a group of like white kids, then you don't have to do that. Any kids of any color, if it's a mass of them that get shot, nobody really cares. Or if it's a group of people in a grocery store. Now that's another good question, Jenny. Was he important or just well known? Well, I think here's the thing. Would he have been important if not for his death? There's a question. I think that there's a world where Charlie Kirk dies in obscurity, because there's a lot of other Charlie Kirks. Like, were it not for the interesting proportions of his face to the size of his skull, and I think that Charlie Kirk would approve of me talking about skull shapes, I would easily get him confused with like a Steven Crowder or a Ben Shapiro or any of those other identical guys who all kind of talk and sound the same. Now, I'm talking as somebody who is about 2 notches off from being Ezra Klein. So, I mean, glass, stones, and houses, and so forth.
Silence to me was not grieving with people. I felt it wasn't important. As someone who is liberal,
grieving with
as someone
people.
who's a voice that
What people did Ezra Klein want to grieve with on that day? Because it was not, and I'm not saying this to be woke. I don't need to, because I just am. It was not a good day for anybody, of course, because Charlie Kirk died, but his legacy was one of manifest violence, bigotry, hatred towards black people, towards all people of color in the United States, towards trans people, towards women, towards a lot of guys whose bodies are just not shaped the right way, towards anybody with disabilities. I mean, I'm not saying that to be like, ooh, don't forget the white guys, but also, don't forget that. Don't forget that Charlie Kirk was just an asshole to everyone, and that this ideology is bad for everyone because it's bad for humans, and humans are all the same, motherfuckers. I took a gummy and I get sincere. I had to cut out a whole sincere rant out of that Peter Thiel video because I didn't feel like editing anymore. Oh, shit.
Right.
And that in that
I instinctively
moment
muted
creates,
Ezra
for me,
Klein.
even if it's very temporary, that it's important in a moment like that to sort of, come together.
A temporary
to try to see
illusion,
other people in
though,
their
is what I would
grief,
say.
to try to cool things down just a little bit. I guess, given everything you read that Charlie Kirk said, and we probably don't have very different views on the value of the things he said, why do you think he was winning?
I mean, that's not really hard for me to understand. I mean, if I could just back up for a second, I want to say 2 things. I published a book 10 years ago, Between the World and Me. And one of the constant reactions.
Well, here's the thing is people did do that. They're called Nazis.
He was overly pessimistic about the future. Why are you so dark, Ta-Nehisi? Why can't you give us any sense of hope? And the reason I would always say is because any sort of sober examination of the history of this country says that those of us who believe in equality, those of us who believe in respecting the humanity of our neighbors and of everyone, that we're up against some really, really powerful forces of history and powerful narratives. And the implication of that is, however good we felt in 2013, 14, 15, 2008, there will be backlash. People, those of us who were crying in 2008 watching Obama, give that speech, those of us who were so moved by watching him and Michelle and step outside the car and felt so much fear for him. And then when nothing happened, felt so great about that. Those of us who believe that seeing a Black family in the White House mirroring what, some of us felt the best of us was the best that we had to offer.
You can see, by the way, if you look closely on the left side of the table, it starts to rise a little bit as Ezra Klein becomes tumescent. There's a fun word that Ezra Klein himself might use when talking about erections in the New York Times. So no, I was going to go into a whole Obama thing. It doesn't matter.
There are other people watching that too. You know what I mean? And I don't take any joy in saying this, but we sometimes soothe ourselves by pointing out that love, acceptance, warmth, that these are powerful forces. I believe they are. I also believe hate is a powerful force. I believe it's a powerful, powerful unifying force. And I think Charlie Kirk was a hate monger.
Okay, so this is the important thing. Like, what he has correctly identified here is the white liberal problem as I see it, and not all white liberals are like this. We'll get back to talking about how useful that any of this language is later. But like, any sober examination of history, as Ta-Nehisi Coates says, shows you that you have to actually fight to maintain freedom, right? Like, there are hateful people in this world who do not see all people as equal, and they are so hateful and they are so self-conscious of the fact of their hatred that they will do anything to destroy that, like, racial harmony. They just will. And so you have to be proactive against stamping down hate groups and just hatred in general. But the entire time Barack Obama was in office, this modern MAGA movement was broiling online, in private Republican spaces, in churches. All of this hate was still there. It just got a little quieter because society got a little more polite. And the warnings that Ta-Nehisi Coates were giving, and a lot of Black intellectual thinkers and activists and writers at that time were saying, was that, if you don't actually enact systemic change, then it's all smoke and mirrors. And all of this talk of hope and change doesn't really matter because you haven't actually taken steps to stamp out future hate and to ensure that we cannot live in a world where there can again be slavery, or we could in any way suspend the civil rights movement. The fact that Trump was possible means that there were failures that came before Trump, because a functioning democracy wouldn't have allowed for that to happen for a million different reasons. And Ezra Klein does not like to think about this, was the point of all that. He doesn't like to think about that. He's an Obama White House guy, and he just wants to think about how amazing and great that was. And if we could just get back to the Obama years, then everything would be fine again. And so we don't actually have to change the world that much. We don't have to change anything that much. We can just do abundance, which is basically neoliberalism. But we finally do get the fast trains, and we can build some shitty fucking houses for homeless people. We can get rid of the regulations that are slowing us down, because we will be doing a good doge. We will be doging for the common good. Like, it sucks. And it's incurious, and it's not based in history. But what this interview made me think is that Ezra Klein, the thing that he's trying to do now with his career, with his voice, his platform, and his words, which what a privilege it is to have the kind of platform that Ezra Klein has. I can't possibly imagine. Lord knows, you could tell, I love talking. But he's chosen to use that platform to apologize for the status quo, to sweep under the rug his own complicity in the kind of environment that we live in now. And, you know, Ezra Klein, I guess this is something else I wanted to say up top. This is somebody who I agree with on probably 90% of things, right? But you can't really talk about human rights and stuff in terms of like percentages. Like, what does that mean, really? We're in a moment right now where we are in a war. We're in a civil war. It was essentially formally announced today by the president and the secretary of war, a new department name given to, so that they can do war to Americans on American soil. Now, we'll get back to this interview, I promise. But something that Ta-Nehisi Coates is going to point out is that this is and will not be the first time that the government has used the military to kill Americans on American soil. They have done it before, and they have done it to black people. They've done it to white people, Waco, Texas, and stuff. But when you look at the full arc of history, objectively, things have actually been a lot worse for a lot more Americans. But if you're a guy like Ezra Klein, whose job requires neoliberal capitalism to exist, and really specifically this kind of government and the New York Times, or a New York Times kind of institution, like you really need all that stuff to exist to continue to matter in your own mind. So, humanity versus Ezra Klein's career, I think, is where we're at there.
I really need to say this over and over again. I have a politic that rejects violence, that rejects political violence. I take no joy in the killing of anyone, no matter what they say.
Based and important, by the way, because they're going to try and tarnish this guy. They're going to try and, like, Ta-Nehisi Coates is one of our most like powerful voices that we have in America. Like, he is going to be public enemy number one in terms of, like, they're going after writers. I mean, the message is far more powerful, inflammatory than anything that was written in, like, the student newspaper opinion sections, right? And so I guess what I'm saying is Coates is actually kind of being brave, and Ezra Klein's kind of being a little fucking weasel.
What the truth of his life was, and the truth of his public life, I would have to tell you it's hate. I would tell you, I'd have to tell you it is the usage of hate and the harnessing of hate towards political ends.
Then let me flip that question actually a bit. Why are we losing?
We're losing because there are always moments when we lose.
Sucks.
See, that feels very fatal.
Sucks so much. This sucks so much. Why are we losing? He's doing it, bringing it back to the same thing of, like, why are we, Democrats, losing? When we don't live in a world where anybody thinks of themselves in terms of, like, I'm a Democrat, as opposed to my neighbor who's a Republican. We're in a world where it's like, are you on the team or not? Are you on team humanity? Are you on team humans, or are you not on team humans? And policy and shit, like, does matter. The way we rebuild society matters, but we are right now in a moment where we need to band together to stop this fascist, like, anvil that's falling on us, Acme style. And because life is a cartoon, thankfully, we've got a lot of time before that anvil hits, and we can construct some kind of contraption to make it spring right back around and hit Wile E. Coyote, the Trump administration, in the face. I don't know what that meant.
It doesn't feel fatalistic to me. It feels like the truth. I mean, and let me express what I mean.
Dude, fucking true.
I'm Ta-Nehisi Coates. I'm the writer. I'm the individual, right? But I am part of something.
I'll lib out about Obama later.
Part of something large.
I'll make Ezra Klein proud later.
I have a tradition. I have ancestry. I have heritage. What that means is that I do whatever I do within the time that I have in my life, whatever time I'm gifted.
The way that Ezra Klein, he was like, oh, that's so fatalistic. It's like, what are you talking about, though? This did happen. We did lose. We, Democrats, humanity, we did lose. So what is this fatalism? What are you saying?
And much of what I do is built on...
Look how mad he is. You can tell how fucking mad he is. He can tell that Coates genuinely does not respect his opinions.
And then after that, I leave the struggle where I leave it. And then hopefully it's in a better place. Oftentimes it's not. That's the history, in fact. And then my progeny pick it up and they keep it going. I am descended from people who in their lifetime fought with all their might for the destruction of chattel slavery in this country. And they never saw it. They never saw it. In my personal belief system, they died in,
People
defeat.
can, by the way, the fact that you were 10.
And so I guess the privilege that I draw out of this, the honor that I draw out of this, is not that things will necessarily be better in my lifetime, but that I will make the contribution that I am supposed to make.
Yes.
The fact of the matter is, as horrifying as that the killing of Charlie Kirk was, and as horrifying as the feeling is.
Oh man, you can really see how mad he is here. This I think is so great, and I don't know. You can tell I'm a fan of his. It's just because I don't know. Sometimes a writer, like you feel like they're writing for you, and I mean definitely. Ta-Nehisi Coates is not writing for me. Like he's writing often to like his sons. Like he takes a stylistic approach where he writes his books like to people, like to someone in his life. So it's very specifically not to me, but just I don't know, like something in the way that he views things and views his responsibility is something that I really connect with and view as like aspirational. And I try not to hero worship anymore because every single guy I've ever thought was cool turned out to be a fucking freak pedophile asshole. But as far as writers go, I think Ta-Nehisi Coates is pretty cool. And I just think you see, like, how is this fatalistic? How is this despairing? Or like this is real, actually. I find the fact that like we can look at history and see that black people in our country and also just all fucking poor people endured such worse conditions and were fine and lived good lives and did cool stuff and made babies that made us be here. And isn't that nice? Like, I find looking to history to be very comforting and really important. But like Ezra Klein's history, and it's something I'm trying to work on too. As somebody whose media diet was a lot of shit like this, is like, my history of America is really only strong back to Nixon.
The honor that I draw out of this is not that things will necessarily be better in my lifetime, but that I will make the contribution that I am supposed to make. The fact of the matter is, as horrifying as the killing of Charlie Kirk was, and as horrifying as the feeling
that's
is,
the biggest picture. I'm setting a lot of good comments aside, by the way.
And I don't want to sound flip here. Political violence is the norm for the black experience in this country.
Yep.
It just is. I don't even mean
this
like the Malcolm
is
X,
where
Martin Luther
Klein
King
gets really
right,
uncomfortable,
which is the norm too. You would be hard pressed to have a conversation with a black person in this country that is a descendant of slavery and not have them be able to reach maybe right here or to tell you themselves, look, my uncle, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, they lived in a small town in Mississippi, in Tennessee, in Alabama. They got into some sort of dispute with a white man, and either they were lynched or we had to run. Political violence runs through us. It is our heritage. Is that good? No. Do we valorize it? Absolutely not. Do we minimize it? Absolutely not. But a life free of it is not a thing that's really in reach in my time.
Sometimes I think that having a
and here's what's incredible is, and we will leave it on this pause face because I think it teaches us a lot, and I think our body language experts out there can analyze this and tell us some things. Like, I think Ta-Nehisi Coates would love to be proven wrong too. Like, if we did find some magical, utopic way through the abundance movement or whatever wonderful movement comes along to magically solve the problem of political violence in America. Like, he would love to be proven wrong, but he keeps on not being proven wrong. And a great example of a time when something could have been done about policing in America is the Obama administration when the Democrats had a trifecta. Now, like, the Obama administration was also the beginning of, or I mean, not totally the beginning, but it was where our modern gridlock really set in, where the idea of bipartisan legislation, which genuinely was a pretty common thing up through the like early 2000s, Republicans' tactics was just, and this was Mitch McConnell's thing. It's just no on everything. You don't work with this person. We don't say yes. They're the enemy. Democrats are the enemy. Remember, liberals and Democrats, to them, are the scum of the earth, villains, most evil far left people that exist. They're not worried about the tankies. They're worried about the far left radical Democrats who want some more taxes on them. And yet, Democratic administrations have not been able to pass police reform. And a critical part of why we are here right now is, unfortunately, the Biden administration's failure to implement the implicit promises of his win. The implicit promises were all of the political excitement at the moment, all of the things that got him elected. The COVID pandemic, certainly, but very critically, was the Black Lives Matter movement. That is what was getting people politically engaged in a way that hadn't happened in a long time. And it was a big reason being able to wrangle in that coalition and make certain promises to that coalition is why Biden got elected. Now, let me tell you exactly who said that defund the police was bad messaging and Democrats shouldn't say it, is Ezra Klein. He's very anti-defund the police. Oh, well, like we should in some way, but we shouldn't call it that, and we got to be careful because of the... And so nothing was done. And again, yes, a lot of that is Republican gridlock, but a lot of it is also a lack of backbone from the Democrats, a lack of creative thinking, a lack of moral clarity. And it is this lack of backbone and moral clarity that we see in Ezra Klein right now that I think makes me feel like this is some watershed moment. Because, we don't have, I guess at the time that like classic debates happened, the people at the time didn't know like, ooh, this is going to be cool. But like, I don't know, those Lincoln Douglas debates, we're not going to get one of those for a long time. This Klein Coates is about as close as we're going to get to something like that. And it's a really important moment because it really is the conflict at the heart of the anti-Trump part of America right now, which is humans who just want to make the world better. And it doesn't matter what we call it. It doesn't matter how it works. What matters is that it works and that it works for everyone. So that's one team. And then there's people who are like, but I want there to be a thing called the Democratic Party, and I need there to be a thing that works exactly the same way as capitalism. And I need it to work exactly the same way that got me rich and in this job in the first place, because I like this and I want to keep doing this. And I would really don't want to have to sacrifice anything for future generations, because I am pretty sure if we just let the private sector build cheap houses for the homeless, we can start to get ahead of this stuff. Makes you think.
Historical scope that wide can make the present too deterministic. So to me, I look at the last, 8, 12 years. Mm-hmm. And what I see having happened is we, the coalition I am in, the things I believe in,
white liberals,
lost ground. And people determinedly worked to make
Why?
that so.
Lost ground.
Charlie Kirk worked to make that so successfully, right? I think that when he began going to college campuses and putting out a sign at a table, what he was eventually going to build was not obvious, right? I think he worked. I think he was a successful political actor.
No, what he built was actually very obvious. I mean, it was a very obvious plan. But by the way, good pause face on Ta-Nehisi Coates, who is kind of rolling his eyes exhaustedly here. No, sorry. Disclaimer that body language experts aren't real, and I'm kind of kidding. I mean, I definitely body language experts aren't real, but I'm not kidding. I do think he's kind of rolling his eyes at Ezra's claim here. Like I think it's good that Ezra Klein is acknowledging that there were forces like determinedly working against them, including Charlie Kirk. But a part of one of the ways that they did that was by incendiary hatred, racial hatred, yes, but gender hatred. There is some kind of interesting data right now showing that people, at least in terms of how they self-identify, are polarized more on gender than they are on race. Who knows if that's actually like 100% true, and it's never just one or the other. But at least in people's self-perception, people are delineating themselves more on gender and stuff. And so, of course, trans people and LGBTQ people, but the trans people, I would say the trans community, in particular, the trans people out there, our hearts go out to them. But unironically, our trans partners out there on the range.
I think that from when in 2016, we lost to Donald Trump the first time, very narrowly, won the popular vote, right? And then
Klein's also a multi-millionaire.
We almost lost
worth pointing out.
And began seeing we were losing a bunch of voters we thought we were fighting for.
That is legitimately.
Losing, more working class voters, losing non-white voters, right? Something was changing, but we won, so okay. And then in 2024, we really got our asses handed to us. And we let a much more dangerous form of politics fully erupt. And I think that reflects strategic decisions they made. I think it reflects decisions we made. So I think for me, it's not enough to say we lost, their backlashes, sometimes you lose. I think it requires like a very fundamental rethinking, like a disciplined strategic rethinking of what have we been doing? Why are people preferring this?
Yes. Okay. So he's right that they do need to have a fundamental strategic rethinking. But Ezra Klein's solution to this, his proposed solution to this, is to kind of just do the same thing, but say it different. But the problem is the answer to his question is like the things that they were doing wrong was capitalism. The thing they were doing wrong was to you, my fellow centrists and moderates and capitalism lovers out there, crony capitalism. That's when it's bad. And I genuinely am too stupid about economics to really understand how anything is supposed to work. And really how numbers work, too. But I think it's pretty clear where capitalism has got us, because here we is right now living in it. And so that's the answer. And, deprioritizing labor. There are democracies around the world who have some form of capitalism. Most governments aren't one or the other. It's a mishmash of different things that you put together in order to form a stable society. It doesn't actually matter what we call things, just like systems that work, right, Bo? And Bo understands this. He uses all kinds of crazy sounds to express himself, but I always know exactly what he means. He sounds just like Sam Altman. Well, Sam Altman sounds just like him, because I gotta think Ezra Klein is older than Sam Altman.
To us. And I do think that is it opens up into something.
The fact that they're both
more,
gray
that I think that there's a practice of politics here. That in a narrow sense I was talking about Kirk, but in a broad sense.
Because when I first started following these guys,
stretching across the show for
they had no gray hair.
Than I'd intended probably.
And I still have no gray hair.
Doing politics, we've written a lot.
And they do have gray hair.
And
so it feels like
we are losing, and we are unable to protect ourselves, unable to protect them, just unable to make good change in the world.
Can you say more about that, writing them off, please?
It's the edible.
Yeah. Why don't we start it here if we want to talk about writing them off? I've been obsessing recently for
unlimited capitalism.
Hillary Clinton deplorables come in, and
I can do a better Emperor Palpatine than that.
Oh, this is so weird. Okay, this is very strange. Let's talk about this. I was going to say, we don't have to watch this whole thing because we'd be here all night, but I'll skip forward after this. But this is a really weird thing that Ezra Klein does. the kind of like strategist commentator type. I don't know. How would you describe what Ezra Klein's deal is? Well, I guess whatever David Pakman's deal is, whatever that is. Oh, he's been posting. I've just muted him from the feed. I don't want to see that Pac-Man anymore. Content slop. I forget what I was saying, but you know what they were talking about. What they're always talking about is just like messaging. Okay, we have a messaging problem. We have all these great ideas, which no, they don't, because they don't even like. If you had a platform of universal health care and we're going to bring the United States up to the level of every other advanced democracy in the world, well, then that would be something. But they don't even have something. They have nothing. They have, let's go back to the way things were before. It's like, but that wasn't all that great. Like, yeah, that was better than now, but that's, if we're going to be going anywhere, let's go somewhere better. Let's not turn around and go back to shitland.
Off, please.
Yeah. Why don't we start it?
And so
here,
what Klein does is he's like, here was the real problem.
I've been writing
was
about the Hillary
us
Clinton
being
policy,
too
and I wanna
mean
play it.
and Hillary saying deplorables.
Journalistic. You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Right? They're racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it. And unfortunately, there are people like that. And he has lifted them up. He has given voice to their websites that used to only have 11,000 people, now have 11 million. He tweets and retweets. They're offensive, hateful, mean-spirited rhetoric. Now, some of those folks, they are irredeemable, but thankfully they are not American.
Okay, so maybe I'm just too radical. Maybe I'm just too radical and raging of a moderate. I actually don't like I don't like this bit. It feels too much like lying. I felt like I was laying on the sarcasm pretty thick in that Peter Thiel video, but there were still so many comments that were like, oh, wow, stop listening when you said you were a centrist. I was like, why did you suddenly think that I was being serious then? I don't know. Media literacy, etc. Okay, Hillary Clinton. Who gives a shit about Hillary Clinton anymore? This woman is married to a pedophile. And I gotta say, that pedophile married to lady just said some shit that was totally true, and I agreed with every word of it. She was right. She was right. I thought it was so stupid. And, you know, when this was happening, I was a Jehovah's Witness. I was very tuned into the election because it felt like, even though we weren't supposed to engage in politics, it felt like a reality show because that's how the media treated it. Because they didn't treat it like, holy fucking shit, there's a real chance that America is about to be destroyed by a cartoon character who, not for nothing, is famously best friends with a pedophile, and we knew that at the time. Even then, god damn it. So, I'm like, here's what it is they're so eager to find fellow moderates. They just like, they really want to believe that. I literally said in that video, a lot of people pick a side, left, right, not me. I don't have a side. I'm just correct. Like, that's a joke structure. And that's how it started. And I feel like, but every single time, and this is a tangent, of course, we do call it the weave, but I actually have a new policy I haven't announced, but it is official, that I'm not going to play Trump's voice unaltered. So if I play any Trump clips in future videos, and unfortunately I'm going to have to in an upcoming project, it'll be altered. Thankfully, there's precedent for that. And as noted, comedy is legal again. What the fuck was I talking about? Tweet and retweet were on a boat. There's no way you could know this, but I would always make that same joke. I promise I didn't just make that up to be like, oh, no, I thought of that. Like Kristen Wiig's character in SNL, who always has to one-up everything everyone says. Oh, right. Okay. So I wasn't supposed to follow politics, but I did. And so I remember listening to like NPR trying both sides that, well, it's very, very unwise and unpresidential to call Americans deplorables. Meanwhile, Trump is calling Mexicans rapists and from insane asylums and promising to ban Muslims from the United States, but here's the uncomfortable truth, okay? And this is an uncomfortable truth for some leftists. Hillary Clinton was 100% fucking right when she said that. There are irredeemable racists in this country. We are all born equal, but we do not all die equal. We are born a blank slate. And a lot of people put some shit on there that we didn't put on there. But at some point we got to look at that slate and be like, hey, I think some of this writing on me is saying Nazi stuff, and I'm going to erase it because I'm a sentient dry erase board in this flawless scenario off the top of my head. There are proudly stupid people, to quote one of my favorite commenters, Producer Shane. I think we can say this is official. This is Producer Shane, official producer for the show, help me out on the ones and twos. I don't actually know what that means. I just know that people in radio would say that. I heard it in an episode of Monk. Oh my god. That's fucking insane because so did I. That Monk was my first favorite show. I mean, it's a very witness-friendly show. It's a murder mystery show where they never show the murder and they're never violent and there's no cursing. And yes, and there's the guy is afraid of everything. And he's just very clean. But you know what? I tried to watch the first episode. I thought I might do a run. Let's take a little Monk break here. Or can we officially be on a Monk break? Quick Monk break. This might become a regular segment, depending on if I follow up on this YouTube video. I have watched the first episode of Monk a couple times since the show ended, but I've never done a full series rewatch. And it has now been, I mean, I don't know how many years it's been since Monk ended, and even then, like, how many years has it been since I saw the first season of Monk? 15 years? More? I hope not, because that implies that I'm older than I would prefer to be. Oh, good. I can deal with that. 15 years. But I have a feeling that Monk, I'm worried about it not holding up because I love detective stories. It was very formative to my young life. And so I've had an idea for a video. I have all of these scripts. I really do. It's genuinely insane, people. I mean, I'm never not working, but it's often not on editing a video. But I justify it because I'm working on a script, and I am, and I'll write a 20,000 word script and I don't film it. I don't do anything with it. So this is not one of those, but because it would not be a scripted thing. But the idea for the video would be I record about a 10-minute segment where I try and recap from memory, best of my knowledge, stuff for Monk. So don't tell me in the comments. No spoilers for Monk. Like, I generally know what happens. But like, I'm talking character names, key events. It's mostly episodic, but there are some little arcs that happen here or there. And so I would talk about almost like a Scott Hasn't Seen, I guess, where I talk about what do I remember about it. But then I do a full series rewatch. So, then I would, in between, filming this, I would take a month and rewatch all of Monk. And I would write my thoughts down, and I would match it up with not just my memory, but my taste. Like, how does it hold up, and do I still like it? And if anyone thinks that's a good idea for a video, all I need is pretty much one thumbs up, and I'll do it for sure. I say for sure, but got a lot of unused, lost analysis scripts that would say otherwise. Okay, that was the tangent. The reason why I said the thing about the weave earlier is because I have a sound drop with Trump talking about the weave, but I don't actually want to play that. So instead, I'm going to take a sip of water, and we're just going to enjoy that.
My church had been giving me ass to drink, but now I was freely receiving, come, the water of life.
Natalie or Sharona? Oh, come on with that question. It's absolutely Sharona. And I have, you know, I grew to like Natalie a lot, of course, but Sharona, you know, she's got the nanny energy. She's got the what's her name from Seinfeld and Friends. It's like Chandler Bing, you know, she's got that energy that I obviously from a young age grew attracted to. Thanks to Sharona and the nanny.
What do you think when you hear that?
It's like the Ohio State University.
Do you think it's true?
I mean, it's probably not how I would say it, but you know, I mean, there are things that I would say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I probably would say what I said earlier, you know, in the interview about the force of, and I mean, as I've been saying this probably since as long as we've been talking.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where we take a step back and we say, what the fuck is Ezra Klein talking about here? This man, the year is 2025, my friends, and 10 years after the event, he is asking one of the great intellectual black writers of our time who has criticized him for being racist. Hey, what do you think of the basket of deplorables comment from the 2015 primary? This is a problem. This is a big problem for the fucking Democrats and thus, unfortunately, for society. This one, anyway, the one I gotta live in. I got distracted because I noticed this little box, and I was like, what the fuck is that? And it's the reflection of the little switchboard that they have there on the table. Very satisfying to look at this switchboard and wonder what the things might do when you switch them, and what other colors might be there. One assumes red instead of green, but who knows? This is how we get distracted on the stream. But that's, you know, should we call this channel The Tangent? And that way it's fine and it's baked into the brand. You know, could I just like bake in some disclaimers with the branding of the channel? Can I call the channel? I don't really know what this channel is, and it's I talk about my opinions and stuff. Do I always connect them together? No. Does it lead anywhere? No. I think I was saying something about Ezra Klein being accidentally racist. You know, it doesn't really matter that much when you're accidentally racist this many times in a row. And there are gradations of racism. Like, you know, I don't think that Ezra Klein has a seething hatred of black people or something, but he is very much complicit in this institutional racism that the Republican Party and some liberals have tried so hard to stamp out. The very real fact that we were a country built on genocide and slavery. Now, if you are interested in building a society based on fucking facts and real life and learning real history because you really believe that humans can do better and you believe in things like knowledge and learning things, like, then it doesn't really fucking matter. But Ezra Klein and his ilk, and what an ilk it is, they just would really prefer that we not talk so much about race and stop talking about this. Well, it's like the fact that we're talking about it because it is an unaddressed open wound in the nation's history. And the effects of systemic racism are so strong that the current administration is openly bragging about its intentions to get rid of the civil rights movement. And has intimated that it might even look at interracial marriage. They're calling. We have elected officials in this country calling for public executions today. Like that happened today. That some Republican called for people to be hanged. That's the reality that we're in right now. Whatever kind of fucking founding father bullshit you want to talk about, it doesn't really matter in anything other than the abstract, and to inspire and to organize against this thing and to educate, and what's the point in educating if you're in being introspective if you're only going to be halfway introspective and halfway educate yourself. And so I think that the Democrats reached, or maybe, yeah, like the Democratic Party people. I call them party people because, like, I'm a Democrat. This is I've voted Democrat, but I don't like ideologically care about the party stuff, and I think most people in America do not. Like most people are just like they vote, but it's not their whole personality. The party thing. Sorry, I got a little distracted. The accidental racist. I think the point of that was that systemic racism is real. And if we simply address this problem and lived in reality, then, we wouldn't talk about it all the time because then it would be in the past. But because we refuse to make it the past, it stays in the present. The tendrils of it are still stuck to us. We still got these barnacles on the ship, and we're just here shoveling the coal. And how can I not have the shovel the coal guy at the ready at a time like this?
But I'm not. I just want to be clear about something. I shouldn't be running for president of the United States.
The original point was. The point is not, should Hillary Clinton have said that shit? Did that cause some domino effect of polarization? It's like, dude, what the fuck are you saying? Polarization. They're calling for us to be killed.
And my expectations for the rhetoric of writers, intellectuals, journalists, etc., is very, very different than
Hillary might be a pedophile
for people who expect to hold office.
That was a presidential race against two pedophiles.
Think that there are different jobs in all this.
Allegedly.
But when I say we began writing people off, I think
actually I don't. I'm a little uncomfortable with the fact that people just call Hillary for sure a pedophile. I don't know. Do we know that's true? Like, she's complicit in some way because of her, the fact that she's still with Bill Clinton. But, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it doesn't. Why am I talking about this? His face. Every time you pause his face, you just see
something
what the mood is.
And I think something I saw in this debate, but kind of like underneath it, was that the work of politics.
There's another thing.
Bridging over a lot of profound, fundamental moral disagreements. I think it became somewhat demeaned, diminished. It began to seem like, in many cases, a betrayal to people. The pen
quite literally
shrunk. The people I feel more comfortable with wielding power shrunk. And I think what Clinton was saying there came from somewhere. It came from,
Yeah, and he's not comfortable with socialists holding power. I know that. What I find so strange about it is, like, it's not like in a democratic socialist society there would be no Ezra Kleins. Like, I just think he knows that he wouldn't be as respected because he knows that he has spent the majority of his public life articulating and defending why this kind of democracy should exist and not all the things that it turns out we actually need.
This is a great point. And I think I really saw it. In some ways more in Trump's first term, but I see it now too. Which is...
I'm going to
the worst...
fast forward to this part.
You know what I mean? It's very, very important to me.
There's a good quote here.
For Haitian immigrants,
this is really, really, really good.
Do that, and I can't ever contribute to making them feel like they've been abandoned, and B, I can't ever stand by and watch somebody do that. And in the name of unity or whatever, act like that's not happening because there are real consequences. And so it's like, when I read his words towards trans people, Jesus, when I read, you know what I mean, the language towards Haitians specifically, which was very, very, Haitians will become your masters.
Yeah.
If you don't elect Trump.
Really
this is
gross
very, very
stuff.
familiar to me. You know, it's this idea of Haitians coming into the country or immigrants raping your daughters. I mean, this was really, really, really dark stuff. It's at the core of this country. And so I feel like for Haitian immigrants that are in, Ohio, who are living under the weight of this, for trans kids who, you know what I mean, are dealing with, being, I don't even want to use the term bully, beaten up, attacked, threatened. You know what I mean? It's very, very important to me, given the post I have, to say, I see you, but also, this dude was wrong. And I'm all for unifying, I'm all for bridging gaps, but not at the expense of my neighbor's humanity. I just can't.
I think this...
Not at the expense of my neighbor's humanity. And this is the thing, hey. Calling someone deplorable and racist is not the same thing as saying that they deserve to be executed and neutered and locked up and all of the horrible, violent things that the right says about trans people and people of color and the left and the wokesters. God damn it, Bo. Come here. Come to your father. Hello, sir. Sir. Bo. Please don't knock the Beatrice letters off the shelf. I would very much like you to come over here and not knock over the painting like you did before the stream started. Oh, god damn it, Bo. Oh, we might have to go to a break, folks. Oh, we might have to go to a break. Oh, my God. Oh, God. We'll be right back.
Wow. Listen. And it says here, forego financial advantages to attend all 3 sessions here. So again, does God notice and appreciate your efforts? Well, perhaps not.
I had a horrible moment where I couldn't find the button to stop playing the clip, and I was like, "Oh, this is a long one. There's going to be a minute and 30 more seconds of that if I can't find the off button." So, not at my neighbor's humanity. I think this is the paradox of tolerance thing that people like Ezra Klein, for some reason, just don't seem to be willing to engage with, and I think it maybe does come a little bit from the capitalist mindset, although I don't think they would necessarily think of it that way. It's like, well, you don't want to turn off that part of the market. You don't want to turn off those potential buyers, right-wing people. I don't know. Maybe that's not it. Maybe that has nothing to do with anything. But we have to live in a world where everyone is at least in agreement in the project of continuing humanity in the innate value of all human beings. That's not that much to ask. None of us get to choose how or where we're born or what kind of bodies we're born into. So we should try and ensure some kind of basic way of living for everyone. And here's the great news. We have the money and resources to do it, but it needs to be distributed differently. We need to build different kinds of systems than the ones that we have now. And I am genuinely too stupid to know how to do any of that stuff. And what I wish I was like a video game streamer, but this is all I can think about all the time. And so this is what I talk about instead. Ooh. You know what? Okay, so we're doing a rewatch now. We finished Breaking Bad. We're plowed through Better Call Saul, and then of course there's a thing that happens midway through the final season that is so heart-rending. Rending? Wrenching. Rendering. Let's stop. The point is, we got to that part, and it makes me, when I start to get to the end of a show, then I don't want to end it, and then I don't finish it. But now you've reminded me that I can complete the autism loop in my head of capping it off with El Camino, and that will be very satisfying to me. And then this weight hanging over me of having to finish my rewatch of Better Call Saul, that can be a weight off my shoulders.
We go to there, right? Not at the expense of my neighbor's humanity. Because I've gotten a lot of that in email, right? Like, how am I supposed to talk to these people? How am I supposed to deal with these people who are denying my humanity?
Yeah.
I'm not against talking to him about it. I'll talk to you very clearly.
Yeah, sure.
I have no problem with that.
Right. This is some weaselly shit. He is posing a new question. Nobody is saying that we can't talk to each other, but there's no, like, if you don't think that someone is an equal human being to yourself because of some immutable trait, well, then what kind of agreement are we really going to have on anything exactly?
I guess the place where I'm not even 100% sure if we disagree, if you just like sort of see your role differently, right?
His role
I think that in losing as badly as we have,
in the
we have
grand
imperiled
game.
trans people terribly.
Yes.
Politics is for power.
Joe Biden did that.
Politics is for power.
Boom. Yeah. He's so fucking cool. And he's right. Like, this is the thing that, I had to kind of come to grips with. Very, I liked Joe Biden as a man for a long time before he became president. And so, I was very pro-Biden, even though he was not as lefty as I wanted. And, domestically, he was doing a lot of things that were good, blah, blah, blah. But I was disappointed pretty quickly. And then Palestine, it was kind of game over. What I found so disappointing on a human level about Joe Biden was that he turned out to be every bit as egotistical as Trump. I wrote a piece about it on my Substack. A piece, it's a bit of a lofty word for a long, essentially live stream that is just a blog. But, if he was really this patriotic founding father type figure, as he clearly viewed himself, then he would have made the George Washington type noble decision of going into that presidency with the understanding that already the majority of Americans polling consistently showed did not want him to be president again. And he did intimate on the campaign trail that he would be a passing of the baton. And so he should have gone into that presidency with the freedom of knowing that he was going to be a one-term president, of committing to that and throwing caution to the wind and doing what was necessary to ensure that there could not be another Trump, that we could solidify rights for, yes, trans people, for black people, in the sense of making good on these promises of Black Lives Matter and reforming policing, reforming the Supreme Court, which was, of course, totally fucked after Trump, rammed through those nominations. So that's what should have been done. And because those things weren't done, now trans people are in terrible danger, more than they were before. And it wasn't such a great situation. Our immigrant friends and neighbors are in much greater danger, and not just immigrants, but anyone who just looks like they might be an immigrant to an ICE agent. Like, it doesn't even matter. They're not even checking to see if you are a citizen. They don't care if you've done any crimes. Like, we're so far beyond these kind of arguments. And I think, like, Ezra Klein's unwillingness to truly question the establishment, in the sense of questioning, like, the establishing foundational principles of our democracy, like, that is his weakness. as a thinker, writer, whatever.
And so I think that the question I am just genuinely struggling with isn't how to have like a great kumbaya moment. But I think it is taking seriously that something we're doing is not working. I mean, I had Sarah McBride, who's the first trans member of Congress on the show, and she was talking. We were talking about every single
save that discussion for another
you can
time.
offer on like trans rights has gone in the wrong direction.
Yeah, see, and like listen to this shit. Like he's a man who's totally given up on the art of persuasion, and the entire thing that Ta-Nehisi Coates is talking about in the message, really, which is our ability to use our words to try and describe and get to the heart of problems in a way that people aren't seeing already. But all he's doing is being like, oh, well, but the polling says this, so which direction should we go? I mean, morally, I think we should go this direction, but because of the polling, well, maybe we need to concede certain blah, blah, blah. And it's just like weak, sauce, spineless shit. And, he thinks he's doing this for noble reasons, but he's not. He's doing it because he's a coward. And we don't love to see it, and he's not standing on business.
Years. Right, we've just begun to lose that argument terribly, and that has put people in real danger.
No, we have not lost the art.
I want people to feel seen in my writing, and I want people to feel seen
we are about
in
to have a
my
conniption.
podcasting.
That's what we are about to do.
But I think the place I'm trying to
we are losing our patience with Ezra
Klein.
Klein.
A diminishment of the political coalition building that we now need to do, because we have come to the view that a pretty wide variety of people are in some ways kind of deplorables. I think it's weakened a bit in the last couple of years.
I would never use that language. Jesus Christ.
But
like that's not. So when you ask me about that Hillary Clinton, that's what I would never say it like that.
That's great. I think it's good that you wouldn't say it like that. But I'm not saying.
I don't even think that, by the way. Like I don't even focus on people. Look, I am at war with certain ideologies and ideas, and I want them expunged. I want to turn them into phrenology. That's what I want. But I don't want the people. You know what I mean? Out. Like when you start talking about who people are and their bones, like that.
Yeah, like that. Here's another thing I like about Ta-Nehisi Coates is he's such a better person than me. Like, I am mean, and I would just call people a basket of deplorables because it's a really bad pun. And that's the kind of thing I say all the time. I mean, frankly, I would have absolutely advised Hillary Clinton to say Pokemon go to the polls. I would have said absolutely. I would have said, say it a bunch of times. Well, that's the thing. Like, in their minds, that's when the world turned upside down. And if you look, like, the further back you start to look, you realize, well, while there are certain turning points in history, we're now at a point where we can't, like, we're not in a continuation of the system. Like, the idea that whatever election, whatever sham semblance of an election happens in 2028, assuming there is one, maybe they create some kind of fiction. I'm going to take these headphones off for a minute. God, they're really stifling. Shout out to Christina for getting me these headphones, which are wonderful because I've needed headphones for editing, and I've just never really had anything other than my crappy Bluetooth headphones. So she's the best. And we do love her, and she does stand on business. Yeah, they can't evolve because that's the thing. They don't view their work as how do we make the world a better place? How do we make our society freer and fairer for everyone and ensure that everyone does have life, liberty, and happiness as our Constitution guarantees? Like their project, their role in this, as Ezra Klein would say, is very small and very minute, mechanical, and they don't view it with any kind of imagination or aspiration, because it's a sclerotic system. I think the thing that is scary about Peter Thiel from a villain standpoint, and I'm gonna do another video on him down the road at some point, because I was joking around in that video, but he isn't a stupid person. Like he's an idiot in the sense that all humans are idiots. That's the only point I'm ever trying to make when I say that. Is just like, none of us are actually all that smart, except for maybe Ta-Nehisi Coates. But there's no super geniuses out there who are just magically geniuses at everything and should have that much power over your life. But Peter Thiel is genuinely smart, and like a lot of the problems that he assigns to democracy are totally correct. And it's just that his solution is, and maybe even tearing down the system is directionally correct, but his solution is to replace it with like bullshit feudalism where he gets to be on top. It's very lame. Well, my voice is giving out, and I think we've heard quite enough from Ezra Klein. So, that's God telling me that it's time to wrap up the stream. I think that's what that is. I think I believe in God now after watching the stream, and as always, I'm just a God-loving, God-fearing capitalist guy in the dead center of liberty and justice. That's what I'm in the middle of. But you know what? You can't be in the middle of those things. You gotta have them all at once, which is why we have the red, white, and blue right there on that flag, all there together. Maybe that makes me a communist. A little commune of red, white, and blue people all living together. So I guess you could say I'm some kind of commie. Liberty and justice for all. I don't know. I don't know who I am or what my deal is, but thanks for hanging out with me and watching an interesting podcast conversation, and mostly giving me a springboard to ramble about shit that's been on my mind lately. All right.